Good evening, everyone, and a very, very warm welcome to our second episode under the series 21 Marching. My name is Sonika Aron, and I'm the managing partner of Marching Sheep. Today, we are going to talk about yet another disability, but this time, we are going to talk about a hidden disability. It is not visible, it is something which cannot be seen by others, but it can be felt and experienced by people who go through it. We are going to talk about mental illnesses and more specifically, clinical depression. Depression ranges in seriousness from mild, temporary episodes of sadness to severe, persistent depression. Clinical depression is the more severe form of depression, also known as major depression or major depressive disorder. It isn't the same as depression caused by a loss, such as the death of a loved one, or a medical condition, such as a thyroid disorder. Some of the signs or symptoms of clinical depression may include feelings of sadness, tearfulness, emptiness, or hopelessness, which need not be explained. There might be no reason behind it. Angry outbursts, irritability, or frustration, even over small matters. Loss of interest or pleasure in most or all normal activities. Sleep disturbances, including insomnia or sleeping too much, tiredness and lack of energy, so even small tasks take extra effort, reduced appetite and weight loss, or increased cravings for food and weight gain, anxiety, agitation, or restlessness, slowed thinking, speaking, or body movements, feelings of worthlessness or guilt, fixating on past failures or self blame, trouble thinking, concentrating, making decisions, and remembering things, frequent or recurrent thoughts of death, suicidal thoughts, suicide attempts, or suicide, unexplained physical problems such as back pain, headaches, or pain anywhere in the body. Symptoms can be severe enough to cause noticeable problems in relationships with others or in day to day activities such as work, school, or social activities. Clinical depression can affect people at any age, even children. However, clinical depression symptoms, even if severe, usually improve with psychological counseling or medication or a combination of both. WHO also estimates that about 77.5% Indians suffer from some mental disorder and predicted that by end 2020, roughly 20% of India will suffer from mental illnesses. According to the numbers, 56 million Indians suffer from depression and another 38 million Indians suffer from anxiety disorders. WHO also estimates that in India, the economic loss due to mental health conditions between 2012 to 2030 is 1.03 trillion of 2010 dollars. It's a huge, huge amount. It is therefore imperative that we understand this issue deeply and collectively help individuals dealing with clinical depression overcome it and lead meaningful lives. Mental illnesses is also covered under the RPWD Act 2016. Today we have Arjun Gupta, and it is my pleasure to introduce him to all of you. Arjun, say hi to everyone.
Hey everyone.
Arjun is an author and a mental health blogger. His journey in the field of mental health started in the year 2015 when he was himself first diagnosed with clinical depression. Over the next 18 months, he went to various psychiatrists and psychologists all across the country, but the medications and therapy just didn't seem to work for him. There was consistent self harm, suicidal attempts, and social isolation that continued to mar these 18 months. It was only in February 2017 that Arjun shared a Facebook post documenting his struggles, and he got the support that he needed and started his recovery journey. Since then, he has a blog which documents the lived experiences of clinical depression and also makes people aware about the reality of mental illnesses. In 2018, he published his first book, A to Z of Mental Health, and the second one, Shh, Don't Talk About Mental Health, in 2019, which earned him multiple awards and recognition within the mental health care community of India. He has also spoken at various universities and colleges, talking about the importance of mental health in our daily lives and encouraging sensitivity towards the mentally ill. Arjun, thank you so much for joining us today.
It is a pleasure to be here, Sonika. Thank you so much.
So, Arjun, let's get started and let's dive straight into it, right? You were diagnosed with clinical depression in 2015. Did something happen in your life to trigger the depression?
Not exactly. I think it would have helped if something had happened in my life to trigger it. It would have helped me understand the whole thing better. But uh, at that time in 2015, my life was going perfectly well. I was in a very um, es- es- esteemed college across the country, esteemed medical college, PGIMS Rohtak. I had a great group of friends. I was very successful academically, and my life seemed to be on the up. It was basically I was basically about to launch into my professional career, the one that
Hmm.
I had always wanted as a doctor. But
Right.
then this happened out of nowhere, absolutely nowhere. uh, it just started with some negative thoughts. It started with some isolation, some anger issues. I would get angry at people without any reason. I would be very aggressive all the time. I would take things very negatively for
Hmm.
no reason at all. It was like I had absolutely no idea why this was happening to me. But it
Hmm.
kept happening. And I just completely spiraled into a full blown clinical depression within a few months. And I,
Hmm.
to this day, almost 6 years later, I still don't know why it happened or what particular event led to it.
Hmm. Hmm. So I think it's very interesting to note that if I hear you, there was nothing in your life. I hear you say that you were successful academically, you were in a medical college of your choice, you were poised to start your career journey in what you wanted to be. You had a great gang of friends. Were you popular?
I was popular enough. Like, I
Okay.
don't think I was the most popular guy in
Yeah.
school, but I think I was close to it. So it was never an issue about my standing in, the social standing that I had.
Yeah.
So again, it was I. If there was something that could have possibly been wrong, it would have explained so much in my life,
Huh.
and yet there isn't. It's like you keep looking for these answers because you think they'll help you a lot, and yet
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like these answers exist.
Okay. So what I hear you say is that there was no visible reason for you to get depressed, but you did.
Yeah, yeah.
And it started slowly. It started with thoughts, negative thoughts of you getting angry, of you getting more aggressive. And were these visible to people around you?
The behaviors were very visible because when I used to get angry, I was very visibly angry. I would throw stuff, I would uh, storm out of the room, or I would push some people. that stuff I made sure that that was very visible. I
Hmm.
think in hindsight, I feel like that was some sort of a cry for help. I mean, it didn't seem like one at that point of time. But what was happening was that there was this feeling of abandonment within me, this feeling of
Hmm.
loneliness, and
Hmm.
I couldn't figure out a way to express it in words. So what I ended up doing was expressing it through my actions, again, in a very destructive way, self-destructive way. And naturally, yeah,
Hmm. No, no, go ahead. I'll ask my
yeah,
question
and
later.
yeah, naturally, when you have someone who's going very aggressive on you for no reason at all, it becomes a bit tough to be around them. So I think it sort of became like I was in a self-destructive mode where I was constantly hurting the people close to me, and in the long run, hurting myself as well.
Hmm. Now, if these symptoms were visible, uh, uh, your family was not with you because you were in college. I'm assuming it would be a residential college, right?
It was supposed to be a residential college, but I used to come back every day because it was uncertain about how I would live there, the adaptation. And it was like, okay, let's go there for a few days and then come back, and we'll
Oh.
keep this going. It's not that big of a deal. My family could see that something was wrong with me. They understood, but you know, you don't really associate aggression, anger with depression. So it wasn't
Hmm.
their first reaction that
Hmm.
okay, this might be depression. Depression, when we hear, we think that someone will be crying a lot, they'll be locking themselves in their room, and they'll be like wailing every single moment of the day. But it's not like that. It was full of anger for me, full of aggressiveness, full of irritation. And
Hmm.
I don't think we caught that at the right time. It took a
Hmm.
few months before we understood that something might be wrong.
You've made a very interesting observation because lots of time we think depression is equal to sadness
Hmm.
and expression of sadness, so crying, weeping, wailing, uh, whereas it can manifest in the form of irritation, anger, aggression
Hmm.
as well.
Exactly.
Okay, but what about your medical college? I mean, you were amongst medical professors and people who are supposed to teach all this. So, with due respect, were they not able to identify that you were going through a mental illness?
No, not at all. They weren't even close. They actually, I think they exasperated it a bit because in the first year of college, it is taken as the norm that you will be mistreated a lot, that you will be made fun of a lot, that you will be ragged basically. But you won't be ragged by your seniors, your immediate seniors. You'll be ragged by everyone you see. You'll be ragged by your professors, you'll be ragged by assistant professors, you'll be ragged by a senior you come across, anyone. And they will be, trying to make you feel small. They'll be trying to make you feel like you're worthless. They'll be trying to make you feel like you're an idiot. And that's all that they did. So,
Hmm.
okay, yeah, they were medical professionals. They were supposed to have seen this, but they weren't even close. They didn't even consider the possibility.
Hmm. So let me address this in two parts. Let me first take the first part. You said that it is a norm that in the first year it is expected that everyone will rag you, and not just seniors but even professors and assistant professors. But why? Is this supposed to be some kind of a baptism by fire, toughen you
Exactly.
up? And
Exactly. It is
hmm,
supposed to be an initiation ceremony almost. That the first year uh, you'll be under so much fire that you'll be prepared for anything that life has to throw at you in for the
all
rest of your life as a doctor. That's what the logic is. But I think that was limited to some colleges only because the next year I went to a different college in a different city, and the culture there was completely different. So it was
right.
about empathy, it was about understanding, it was about it wasn't really about taking care of people, but it wasn't that you would be targeted or that you would be made to feel like you're worthless. It was just very professional there. So I think this is a culture which exists in some colleges in India. I'd like to think not all of them.
Uh, Even though you said, Arjun, when we earlier spoke as well, and today as well, even though you say that no, nothing happened in my life to really trigger Do you think that this behavior could somewhere have played a role in your clinical depression?
I used to think that as well, but these negative thoughts that I was talking about, they had started before I joined my college.
All right.
So the aggression had started before I joined my college. The negative emotions, the negative thoughts, the spiraling that I used to go through, it had
Mm,
started before I went there. What happened was when I went there, there were so many negative events that were happening to me, like I'd be scolded every day, or that I'd be made fun of every day, sometimes in front of the whole class, that it just made everything worse for me.
mm,
It made it difficult because when you're in a tough spot and then you are going through more and more things which are making it tougher to go through them, you're
mm,
basically going lower and lower every day until you hit rock bottom.
mm,
So I won't say that it caused that, but it certainly didn't make it any better.
mm. All right. So you also said that, your 18 months, you did not really respond to any, I mean, you went from psychologist to psychologist, you went from
Yeah.
psychiatrist to psychiatrist. But why wasn't it helping? Why weren't the medication and the counseling helping?
Honestly, because I didn't believe they would work. I, for 18 months, I accepted very openly. I did not think that depression was a real illness, or that it was something that a doctor could fix, or something that talking could fix. You have these attitudes towards depression, that depression happens to weak people, or you have to take these medications only because you can't really cope up with the stress in your life. I used to believe that, and
Mm,
it was very tough for me to accept that I could be someone who could have depression, because again,
mm,
in my mind, depression only happens to weak people. So for 18 months, you can say that while I was going to psychiatrist to psychiatrist, psychologist to psychologist, I was not cooperating with them. I was not telling them how I felt. I was not telling them what I was thinking. I was just sitting there and feeling like every moment that they spent with me, I would be even weaker than I was before.
mm,
So it took me a long time to, overcome that self stigma almost, that depression is an illness, that it is something that can happen to anyone, and it's not my fault, and I deserve the therapy that I need for it. That's what it
mm.
took for me to overcome that.
So, how did that change happen? How did you come to accept that depression can happen to anyone and it is not a sign of weakness?
It's actually pretty straightforward, the story. You On February 13th, 2017, I had mentioned that I wrote a long Facebook post, but the story before that is that a day before that Facebook post, I had my last suicide attempt. And I am really bad at dying. I have realized that.
You said your
Yeah,
last suicide attempt. So, how many
yeah,
suicide attempts were there?
there were around three.
My
Uh,
God.
yeah, and taking all those three into account, I'm very, very bad at dying. And it was on 13th February that I finally realized that, okay, I am not cut out for this. Uh, Maybe I should try to do something else. And the next day, I wrote out this very long Facebook post saying that I'm going through something. I'm going through clinical depression, and I have been going through it for 18 months. I have been isolated. I have been left alone in this time, and I need some support. I was very clear in my requirements that I need people to support me. I don't want you to give
Why
me.
the isolation? So, one isolation could have happened because you were aggressive, you were
Mm,
destructive, but you would also have people who loved you and who understood you.
yeah.
So, help me understand the isolation piece, Arjun.
The isolation, I'd rather call it loneliness, because even when you have people who love you and care for you, when you are depressed, you don't see that. You think they are in that for their own good, that they don't really care about you. They're just trying to, not feel bad about themselves, which is why they're trying to help you. So there is this always this suspicion, this cynicism that goes on, that nobody actually cares about you. They're doing all of this just for themselves.
Mm,
And when I was writing that Facebook post on 14th February, I was actually opening myself up to
Hmm.
the idea that people might actually care about me, that I might not be alone here, which is why it was such a big step, because I was literally showing my vulnerability to thousands of strangers on Facebook.
Hmm.
And I think the response to that is what, made me feel a lot better about myself, because it was not full of recommendations that do some yoga and it will be okay, do some exercise and it will be okay, or talk to some people, it will be okay. It was just understanding that we understand what you're going through and we know that you can overcome this. And I think that was very beautiful. It genuinely changed my life around.
Hmm. And then what was your next step? Now that you accepted it, I think
Hmm,
your acceptance happened. And I want to stay with acceptance because uh, you had your own journey of 18 months from saying that it is only weak people who have depression. The fact is that a lot of people today believe that any kind of mental illness is a sign of weakness.
hmm,
There is a taboo around mental illness. If tomorrow I am going to a psychiatrist, if I am having an anxiety attack or a panic attack, I will hide it from the world,
hmm.
right? So how can people overcome, or as a society, how what would be your message to the society to make it realize that there should be no stigma attached to mental illness? I mean, if I have a fracture, I will wear it like a badge of honor. I will go and get it signed,
Hmm.
right? From who's who and say that मेरी हड्डी टूट गई. But you know, how do we get people to accept mental illness as an illness?
I think I've tried to understand where the stigma comes from. And what I can understand so far is that when we say that hamari haddi toot gayi, we say
हाँ.
that a part of you is broken. We think that a part of you is broken.
हाँ.
But when we say the idea of mental illness in itself makes people think that you are broken, that yourself is broken.
दिमाग ही तो है और उसका भी एक
Exactly,
पार्ट.
exactly. And
हाँ.
people consider the mind as yourself. So
And that
what
too,
happens is,
if I understand correctly, it is hormonal imbalance.
yeah, it is a neurotransmitter imbalance, which is
है ना?
affected by a lot of other things as well.
हाँ.
But on the very basics of it, it's a neurotransmitter imbalance which causes it. So
Hmm.
to tell some person that you have a brain tumor, that is understandable. But to tell
हाँ.
someone that they have a mental illness, that is not understandable, because that is something that's wrong with you. You, it's not something wrong with a part of you, it's something wrong with you. So we'll have to make this distinction between people, that uh, people who are depressed or people who have anxiety, people who have PTSD, they are not just these illnesses. They have some part of their brain is not working, but they are still the same person. And
Hmm.
it is not a sign of weakness, because this is not something that's in their control. This is,
So by that logic, even people who have a heart disease should hide it because heart is also you. Why only brain?
yeah. I mean, it's a debate on the mind and body thing, that our body can be ill, but our mind can't be ill. That's what people think. We think that the
Because
two are separate and immune entities. Yeah.
but because you are also defined by your heart, no? Your heart is
Mm.
equally important as brain. तो हम हार्ट की प्रॉब्लम है, वो भी हम बड़ी प्राउडली बताते हैं.
Yeah, if people were, rational at all points of their lives, there would be very few problems that exist in the world right now. But that's our problem. We let our prejudices and our, emotions sometimes make our decisions for us.
Yeah. So I really would like you to give this message loud and clear to everyone that, it is not, I mean, and try and explain it to them as scientifically and logically as you can, that why it should not be a stigma, if you can.
Okay. Okay. So there are many parts of the body. There is the hand, leg, face, brain. Every part of the body can have some problems at some point of our life. The brain can have some problems too. Just because the brain has some problems, it does not mean that you are weak or that you are not able to cope up with your life or that you are somehow a failure. There is no moral judgment that comes along with a slightly dysfunctional brain, which can be fixed. It's not something that can never be fixed. Your brain is constantly changing, you are constantly changing, and if there is something that's going wrong, it can be fixed as well. It does not have to last for life, it does not have to last forever. If you take the right steps at the right time, you can be helped. That's all there is.
Super. Thank you so much for that, Arjun. I think this is what we need. Firstly, we as ourselves to accept if I am going through any kind of mental illness, because I have to take the step to first cure myself.
Hmm.
And secondly, let me ask you, whether when you were going through the clinical depression or maybe later now, because you also are a blogger, you're also helping people deal with mental illness. Do you see any kind of bias, microaggression towards people with mental illnesses? And what are those microaggressions and biases?
The problem with microaggressions and biases is that you end up questioning yourself, are they really there? And when there are so few people who are actually open about their mental illnesses, it becomes very difficult to have an understanding of it.
Hmm.
I personally have not seen any microaggressions or biases yet, because I have been, in a field in psychology where it is very accepted, it's very understood that, हाँ, ये तो होता है. This is a real problem that he went through, and it's not that big of a deal. But there are some times in my city when it feels like something's different, something
Yeah.
which shouldn't be. And you're all the time questioning ki, am I just making stuff up in my head, or is it something that's actually there? So I can't report any biases as yet,
Hmm.
uh, gladly, but yeah, I'm not sure that this will last for a long time.
Yeah. And what would you tell employers? Because the fact is that um, the way we work, I mean, even if we were to take COVID aside for a moment, while COVID has had a major impact, um, uh, on people,
Hmm.
burnout, stress, anxiety out of COVID is real and it has increased. But even if we were to put it aside for a minute, the very fact that the way people have been working in corporates, the long hours, the politics, the race to the top, and everything, there is stress at work.
Hmm.
Whether we like it or not, there is stress at work. So, what would be your message as somebody who works in the field of mental illness and mental support? What would be your message to employers? How should they support their employees and be
If I
inclusive?
understand, yeah,
And
if
be
I
inclusive.
understand if I
Yeah.
understand employers well enough, it is a very, if I understand business well enough, it is a very money minded thing where you have to have your profits and losses mapped out. So I'll just say a simple thing: for every dollar you invest in your employees' well being, mental well being, in their mental health, you get $4 in return through increased productivity, a better work environment, a better organizational commitment. You'll get all of that back fourfold. So it's important that you invest in your employees' mental health. And when it comes to mental illnesses, you have to understand that a person is not just his or her illness, they are a lot more than that. And don't let illness define the outcome of the interview or the selection process.
Yeah.
Look
Or
at
the
the person's
performance
skills.
appraisal.
Exactly. Look at the
Yeah.
person's skills, their talents, their communication skills. Don't look at an illness that they unfortunately went through.
Awesome. Right. Thank you so much, Arjun. I think we've had a, a very nice, very candid, very succinct
Yeah.
interview. I think you were absolutely on point, and thanks a ton. That's all I can
Yeah.
say. And
That,
I hope you continue to do this great work. I think your books, your blog is reaching a lot of people, it is helping a lot of people, and that is what we need in today's time. And with today's interview, I hope everybody who watches this shares it ahead, because some of the things that Arjun has said, particularly about mental illness being not a stigma, and let's accept it, let it not be a social taboo, that is the starting point. That is where we'll be able to deal with it as a society holistically. So I hope people share it forward. And I will sign off for now, and we will be back next week with yet another conversation. Thank you all so much for joining in. And thank you once again, Arjun, for your time.
thank you so much, Sonika, and thank you so much everyone for joining in. Okay. So
All right. Bye bye.
bye bye.
Bye.